I was born when my parents were both 19, and my only other brother, let's call him Josh, was born when they were 42. They divorced shortly after Josh was introduced to the world. He was 4 months old at the time. And they both wanted nothing to do with the child. At the time, I was 23 and I was living alone with my then girlfriend who was 21, now my wife. And I'd done my best to convince at least one of them to take care of young Josh for his sake and the family's sake. But they refused adamantly and said that I should be taking custody of him instead. So I became legal guardian of my brother and he's been living with us for the past 12 years and things have been going really smooth for us. Josh, now almost 13, has been calling me Dad and my wife Mum and our 2 children, 4, 9 years. His siblings and he has absolutely no idea about his real parents, and to be honest, I let all of that slide. He has no idea that I'm really his blood brother and not his father, and I'm starting to feel guilty and a little weird. Some of my uncles and aunts come to visit occasionally and they are really disgusted at the fact he calls me Dad, and they are surprised I haven't told him the truth. They constantly messaged me, talked to me in private, and I cannot chat to them without this one particular topic rising up, badgering me to let him know already, but I refused. I discussed this with my wife and she thought it would be wrong to tell him the truth because none of my parents wanted to take care of him, and I'm the only person in the world who gave him the father figure everyone deserves. I feel that he has the right to know what he is to me and what I truly am to him. But he's suffered enough already and I just want things to continue how it is. My husband and I have been married for 21 years. We have 2 adult children, one is in college out of state and the other is in the Navy. When we first got married, my husband was in Navy and we spent the first 10 years of our marriage moving from place to place, wherever his new duty station was. I found it hard to make friends, and I could not keep a job, so I made a difficult decision and decided to be a som. When he got out of the Navy 11 years ago, he took a job and we moved. 3 years in, he got offered a job in another part of the company, however, it was in another state, so we moved again. We stayed there for 6 years. I went back to college and got my degree and began looking for work. I found a job I liked in my field, and 6 months into working, he said he was offered a job with a new company and wanted to take it. But that would mean we would be moving almost 2,000 miles from where we were in a new state. I reluctantly agreed because the new state would have more job opportunities for me and we would be closer to our family, which is something that we have not had in many years. Last night my husband came up to me and said that there was a job opening in his company and he wanted to apply for it. It would mean a pay raise and better hours, but the caveat would be that we have to move again. We have been living in our new state for 3 years. I love it here. I have an amazing job and I am making great money. I finally have friends and am able to socialize. I told him that I am not moving again. Anytime we have to move, he always leaves first and I end up being responsible for selling / packing the house. And I am not doing that again. Our son's college is only 2 hours from here. We can see him twice a month. If we move, that means we would have at least a day's drive and would only be able to do that once or twice a year. Now my husband is upset with me and guilt-tripping me because he claims I do not support him. I told him that was BS because I spent most of my life moving from place to support his career. He told me that I am selfish and he is just trying to provide for us. I told him that we are more than comfortable where we are now, and that if he truly wants to take the job, he will be going alone. My husband and I have been together since I was 15 and he was 17. He joined the Navy right after graduation from high school when he was 18 and I was 16, but had to wait 2 years before we could marry. He works for a company that has plants in 15 states. He is currently in middle management, but if he wants to advance his career further, he would need to go to another plant out of state. Financially, we are more than comfortable. We do not need any more money. My son plans to stay in the place he is after college. We have a great relationship with him and he comes home 1 time a month and we see him 1 time a month. My other son comes home on leave whenever he can and stays with us. We are very close to both of the boys. I talked to my husband again tonight and told him quite firmly that moving again was not an option for me. The area he wants to move has very little jobs in my field and specialty in that area. And I would need to commute more than an hour one way for a job versus the 20 minutes I have here. We are sandwiched between two major cities, and if we move we would be an hour from the most major city. I would also have to take a massive pay cut and work a menial job to build a new network to find employment in my field. My husband is disappointed in me for not wanting to leave. He left to stay with a friend because he needs to think. He doesn't understand why I would force him to turn down an opportunity to advance his career further. I told him to take all the time he needs, but I am not moving again. I said I would revisit the possibility when I am ready for retirement in 15 years, but no sooner. 6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth. Because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. My husband, 35 years old, does not have a car. He sold his old one to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that did not affect me till my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hangout places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad his driving is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asked if he could drive my car to the wedding, but I refused, but not because I'm not invited. Another story for another day, because like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and couldn't find my car either. I was beyond pissed. I called him and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for a whole 5 days and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do it 'cause you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, swearing over and over that I gave him permission to take it and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend a wedding that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to be there with his family and decided to extend his stay, and he still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful.